Welcome to The Gap, where it's our mission to bridge the gap between training and on-field performance.
I'm Brett Hart, owner of Hitman Performance.
And I'm Dan Labadia, the owner of Jack Javelin.
Hope you guys enjoy the show. Hello everyone, welcome back to this episode of The Gap. Today we have Dr. Jarod Burton at Train Efficiently on Instagram. Jarod is a chiropractor. He is a co-inventor of the impulse training with the oscillatory isometrics with the chains that you see, aka the Tommy John speed run, which I'm sure he'll go over a little bit later in this episode. But we're really excited to have him on and to hear what he has to say. So, Dr. Jarod Burton, welcome to The Gap.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Jarod, just give us a little bit of a brief intro and a background on who you are, what you do, and it's pretty much going to be like a 5-minute elevator pitch for you to explain to the audience who you are.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's start with this. So I had a dream to always kind of play professional baseball. And so I was very focused on playing that. However, when I was 12 years old, I would have excruciating back pain. And no 12-year-old should have excruciating back pain ever. It doesn't make any sense. And so I started exploring a lot with training and just different ways of training, trying to figure out, okay, how to get myself healthy. And so from that stretch, I was like, oh, I'm going to be a physical therapist or something like that. And then as I started going through, I played college baseball and going through the different weight rooms and stuff. I was like, oh, I'm going to be a strength and conditioning coach instead. This is way cooler. And I felt like you could get more done potentially in the weight room than you could in the physical therapy. So that was the route that I wanted to go. And then I realized that I wanted to have a family. And in order to have a family, you usually need to have money and you need to have time. And if you're going to be a strength and conditioning coach, you don't make a lot of money and your time is very limited. So then I was like, okay, let's go back to physical therapy. And then my senior year of college, that's when so at DAC Performance and Health, Brady and we've known each other. We played at the same college. And he was offered a job opportunity to go down to a baseball facility in Missouri. And he asked me to come with him. And so he was going to handle the skill side. I was going to handle the weight room. And so I was like, well, this is a dream. I can go down there. I can run the strength and conditioning floor. And so we did that. And basically from there, I had tons of athletes injured. So guys would come in and we grew really fast. And there'd be like 16 guys injured. I'd be like, what happened? And they'd be like, well, we max deadlifted, squat, ran 2 miles, and then we did stairs for 20 minutes or something like that. And I was like, okay. And I'm looking at our weight room progression. I'm like, okay, we have heavy lift, heavy eccentric, or something like that. I'm like, okay, well, that's not going to work. And so it became this exploratory curiosity game of how can I get these guys healthy? Because I'm no longer a strength coach. I'm somebody who needs to get these guys so that they can manage their CrossFit training at their high school gyms. And that's when I started getting connected into the field of chiropractic. I had no idea what chiropractic was, what they do. But I have some mentors who are deep into the chiropractic neurology. Had some of them come out to our facility, saw what they did, immediately fell in love. Then I was like, okay, I got to do this. I just saw how quickly the results they got. I was spending times of 45 minutes to 60 minutes with one guy, and then he would get better. As if a chiropractor worked with him, he'd be better in about under 5 minutes. So time efficiency wise, I was like, I got to learn this. So decided to go back to school. When I was in school, I had some great mentors as well in the functional neurology world. And then, let's see, then I had some other people that I kind of mentored under, and I mentioned kind of beforehand with being like a medical assistant at an integrated medicine clinic office. And then graduated from chiropractic school and started chiropractic, got back into Train Efficiently, training people online. And now my thing is, I expect all of my clients to be healthy in less than 2 weeks. And that's kind of the pressure or the what I expect for everybody to happen. And I've seen the results that I can get with applying what the kind of the principles that I apply, and so that's where I'm at now.
Do you think the backlash chiropractors get is warranted or granted? Because I see chiropractics get made fun of quite a bit online.
Yeah, so I tell all of my patients I trust less than 1% of chiropractors. I'm very picky in who touches me, and I've had people, hurt me worse. There's a lot of people that will do 3 minute or less adjustments. So you essentially just lie down on a table face down. You never look at your doctor in the eyes, and boom, boom, boom. Okay, you know, and they make a lot of money that way as well. So you imagine if you saw a person every 3 minutes and then you saw 450 patients a week, you're going to be bringing in some dough. So yeah, chiropractic does get a bad rap, and some of it, like any place, there's bad apples or bad eggs.
So in terms of just functional neurology, how does yours different from that traditional chiropractic route of just cracking back, see you next week. The good feeling will last until you get into your car and then you want it again.
Yeah. Well, before I go into that, I should state not everybody that follows functional neurology doesn't mean that they're bad chiropractors. There's a lot of really good chiropractors that utilize a lot of other good techniques. And even the ones that do 3 minutes, they're nice people. It's just not the philosophy that I want, um, or choose to have. But functional neurology essentially, you probably hear a lot of chiropractors talk about the nervous system. Some people will say we're not back doctors, we're nervous system doctors. And so functional neurology is essentially, it was created by Dr. Ted Carrick. And then the first ever student that he taught was Dr. Gail Henry, and she happened to be one of my good mentors down in Texas. And what we're doing essentially is looking at how the brain is, um, essentially how the brain is interacting with the rest of the body. So is there an area of the brain that might be underactive, overactive? And our job through different motor tests, sensory tests, is to figure out which regions might be overactive or underactive, and then how can we balance the brain out. And so, to put that in short, functional neurology, I would say, is identifying areas of the brain that are underactive and then stimulating that area. And that ties into pain because when the brain is imbalanced, then that's usually when pain will occur. That's when the joint awareness of a joint is no longer there. So the brain body awareness is not there anymore. So once you balance out the brain, it's got good signal going through the rest of the body. Everything works the way that it needs to.
Jared, so I was listening to one of your podcasts the other day, and you mentioned how when you learned about decompressing the T-spine, like that was a big unlock for you in your chiropractic care routine. Is that accurate? Just don't want to speak on you.
Yep.
Okay. So in my past, when I had learned a lot about the mobility side of training for javelin and how to kind of unlock that extra range of mobility in my T-spine and chest and back in order to get more external rotation in my throwing arm, I did a drill called quadruped T-spine breathing. Have you ever heard of that before?
Maybe. I think I can put that a picture in my head of what that would look like.
Yeah, so you basically like get down on the ground in like a cat-cow position in the quadruped position, and you breathe through a straw, and you're essentially trying to inhale really slowly and exhale really slowly to basically expand your diaphragm and your T-spine and your rib cage to help the breathing. So can you talk a little bit about just from that 30-second intro into the T-spine breathing and just the mobility side of it, how would what you're doing with the chiropractic side kind of get that same result of helping the breathing and maybe doing some other benefits that I'm not even aware of?
Yeah. Well, okay, so I should probably say this too. So all of my training that I do online and when I work with athletes, I'm a big proponent of full body adjusting. I love to adjust everything in the proper sequence and all that stuff. Um, and also, I've learned that with the proper movements, you can alter brain function. So the biggest thing that I see with T-spine mobility is actually brainstem imbalance. So when the way I was kind of taught is you can simplify it to say is you have a high brain stem, which is the midbrain, and you got a lower brain stem. And the lower brain stem is more where the vagus nerve sits, and that's the rest and digest. And the high brain stem is the midbrain. Sometimes when that gets over aroused, it down regulates your motor system. And so a lot of times when there is a brain stem imbalance, then you get your thoracic mobility to lock up. And so breath work can be good because what you're doing is that's incorporating more like the limbic system. You're calming your system down. Um, and then when somebody does have a brainstem from an adjustment standpoint, the very first thing that I'm doing is adjusting the diaphragm. But I'm doing that from what they call a P to A instead of an A to P. So doing that from posterior anterior versus anterior to posterior. And so that means that for me, I see the best result of opening up the T-spine is actually when people are lying on their back. Not to say that I don't do things with people lying on their stomach. It's just, as a person, you could still grab a foam roller. Yep, bring out the foam rollers, and you could lie on I don't know if people can see me now, but you can lie on your back on the foam roller and start getting that arch back into your T-spine. You can go arms over your head to help open that up a little bit more. Breathing is important because again, you're creating awareness depending on which channels you want to build into. And so, I think there's other philosophies where how the rib cage is built, whether it's wider out this way or more narrow this way, depends on the aerodynamics. And so when you're doing your breathing exercises, you want to make sure that you can target all channels. You can go out laterally, you can go forward and backwards. You can only send it into the left lung, you can send it into the right lung to say, or put more emphasis on that. So um, I don't know if that helps, but those are all the things that we're thinking about is essentially which ways can you not expand your chest, and then also getting in positions that help open up your chest cavity. And then you go back and you relook at their posture, do some neuro tests, and there's some pretty dramatic changes.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's all about the intentionality whenever you're doing things. And I think, for example, when I was younger and I got something on my program like the quadruped straw breathing, I'm like, what is the point of this? Like, what am I benefiting from, And so I had to ask my coach, and he kind of gave me the explanation there. And just even hearing you elaborate on it, I think that's helpful for people, is just hearing what you're trying to accomplish and how the body works, so that when you are doing something that might seem silly in your program as an athlete, you know the intentionality behind it and you know the purpose behind it, so that you are able to have more intentionality with your training.
Yeah. I'll give you an example. So, recent example when we were at Charleston, South Carolina, visiting IHT Performance. And I was just walking through Jared Slater, just how to run through neuro stuff and kind of run through this like form of functional neurology. And there was a guy that comes in, presents with his posture, and the way that he presents, it's automatic brainstem stuff. So I said, before you do anything else, go have him start with 3 minutes of thoracic mobility. He goes and does that. He comes back. We look at his posture and stuff. Everything is perfect. He's good to go. And so I know now a lot of mobility and stretching and foam rolling, all that stuff gets a bad rap. But I mean, I've even in my history bad rapped on it. But if you understand what it's doing from a neurology standpoint, and if you just spend the first 3 to 5 minutes doing that first, getting the brain to balance out, and then you go into your workout, that's a pretty powerful transformation there.
Yeah, I've been definitely on the side of having those faster priming sessions before the session now, or before the lifting session now, or the training session, whatever you want to call it, whatever your intention is that day. Because I came from doing a lot of mobility, like maybe like an hour a day, 45 minutes a day. And once I got to that level of having really, really good mobility, I realized that there were different ways to simulate the same response and get it done in a quicker amount of time to save more energy for the session. Because a lot of times I felt like when I would go in with 45 minutes to an hour of mobility before the session, I would almost, like, my central nervous system would be so relaxed. I felt like I just walked out of like a hot yoga studio, and I'm like, all right, now I don't want to run fast and lift heavy, and I don't want to train hard. I just want to almost keep doing mobility stuff. So it was like having that dedicated period where I got really, really good at mobility, and then now touching up with 5-10 minutes before the session gets me to a point where I'm ready to perform pretty well.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the nice thing about the nervous system is you don't have to go long. And the thing is immediate input in, immediate input out. And so you can test a lot of the exercises that you're doing as well. I mean, that's kind of like what, from my understanding, like Z Health and Square One, that's a lot of what they're doing is challenging movements and finding things that are stressors. And so um, I try not to go down too much that rabbit hole because that can, like you said, it leads a little bit too much into your workout. But what I'm trying to get at is all you need is one little stimulus, perform it, and your body will respond. You don't always need several.
So you just mentioned Jared Slater, and you were at IHT. Slater was giving me a lot of 5 minute isometrics, and he was mentored under you. And so I feel like you're responsible for that pain and suffering that I was going through. And what really got me into it, because I've loved long duration isometrics, but the 5 minute ones and the different ones I was doing based on how I presented in my posture, the eyes closed, index to nose, pinky to nose test, and then my gait. And we can definitely talk about that because I think my results were pretty substantial and like pretty mind blowing to me. But I want to know why 5 minutes? Like why is that the thing that is like most important? I have some ideas, but why do you think it's just 5 minutes across the board on all these movements?
Okay, so I'm going to have a different perspective than most. And I'm okay with going more than 5 minutes. I will say that. So I don't abide by the 5 minutes. But from what I acknowledge, it depends on which direction you're going. So if you're going to go from a physiological textbook standpoint, you're looking for 5 minutes because 5 minutes is going to take you through all of the energy systems. Another school of thought is that you're doing 5 minutes because it takes 3 minutes for your compensation muscles to fatigue out, and then you have the last 2 minutes to change your compensation. Um, for me, you essentially are holding until the compensation is changed. So I'm okay with holding something for 10, 15 minutes, 40 minutes. Like, if there's an exercise that exposes you, we might spend 2 to 3 days just doing that exercise until it no longer exposes you. Um, and so everybody's going to have their different reasons for why 5 minutes. It also, for me, flows easy for a workout standpoint. I can get different exercises in 5, 5, 5, 5. Um, but I mean, for example, I've had a lot of people get into a wall sit, and you're just going to hang out in the wall sit until you can engage your hamstrings. And I'll sit with them or whatever, but you're just going to be here until you can engage your hamstrings. That's that. So um, I don't know if that's probably about the best answer I can give you about the 5 minutes. And my perspective too has shifted a lot more. I know this is starting to become more popularized, but Gerald Pollack and his whole idea of water structuring and unstructuring. Um, Essentially, to me, that's all it is how long can your muscles, which are water, how long can your muscles stay structured for? And when they can no longer go from two different phase changes with the muscles contracting and relaxing, those are the muscles going through phase changes of water. Um, that's when your muscles fatigue out. They've hit their max tolerance point. That's usually then when you get when the water essentially becomes, or the muscle becomes dehydrated, the water phase change isn't the way that it needs to be. That's when you start getting muscles to kind of shrivel up and shorten. And isometrics are great because you can feed an area and have it um, lengthen back out to say. And so that's another thing about the 5 minutes, maybe sometimes is it takes that amount of time to train your body to elevate a tolerance point and go through different phase changes. Um, I don't know how picky Schroeder or um, I think the other guy there is Charles, but I think he left. I don't know how picky they are with positioning, but I'm also very picky with positioning as well. So it really matters to be in the right position for time under tension in order to change the compensations.
So what I've heard from Jay in the isometrics is I heard Dan Fichter sent Jay a video of him doing a 10-minute push-up hold, and Jay told him that it was bad, that he didn't do it right. And then I heard the same thing from Dak saying that, he did a whatever it was, 5-minute deep range with like 60 pounds on his back or something like that. And when he was explaining it to Jay, Jay told him that it was not, he wasn't doing it right. So what makes an isometric good versus bad? And like, how do you determine if, okay, if they're holding the position for 5 or 10 minutes and they're doing it and they're not failing, at what point does that, is it a bad rep versus a good rep? Like what distinguishes the two?
Um, so when you're no longer able to, so for me, a good positioning is essentially what positions can you not get into? So maybe it's a lunge, and every single time you get into a lunge, your rear leg goes into external rotation. So I'm looking for you to be able to maintain that rear leg driving a little bit into internal rotation. As it's driving into internal rotation, you're starting to force extension of the leg too. So the leg is starting to extend out. Your foot's being in a proper position where you're up on your toes. The heel's not coming off to the side. Hips are not rotating back. And to be honest, I've never really seen anybody be able to hold a position and maintain perfect position throughout the entire time. Most of the position you're constantly exploring and going in and out of position, and that's the whole idea of getting your brain to become more aware of the joint positions that your body's not in. Um, and most people, when they do their push-ups, they will not have 90 degrees from the forearm to the hands. They will not have 90 degrees from the elbow as well. They'll be either too far forward or back. The hips start sagging deep down, so they're no longer maintaining like a board-like position. Feet are going to start turning out. Legs can turn out. So there's a lot. Sometimes when people hold isometrics, it becomes like a mobility, like you're just in that end range and you're no longer being like your muscles are no longer engaged, but you're just kind of holding the stretch. And the idea is that you want your muscles to be engaged the whole time, interacting with the movement. Um, and so there's a lot of movements that I see individuals do on social media that I would not, I would, that's not how I would do it, I guess to say. Whether it's scap positionings or body positionings, breaking, lunge positionings, I don't know. That's all I can, I guess, say on that. I'm just very, very picky about the position and what you're doing, and it goes more than just about the intention. It's very important to feel every aspect of your body and knowing exactly where the breakdown is occurring.
I mean, I always heard Victor talk about is you're essentially always pulling into position. Like that's what makes a slow lower different than just holding a yielding isometric. I think that's what you were touching on. Like with a push up, you're not just slowly relaxing down. You're essentially trying to like pull the boxes up like into you more. And like with the split squat, trying to get the front hamstring activated. And I was going to ask you if you use the like holding the wall sit, trying to get the hamstrings to activate. Do you use that band around the feet and pull it, or you try to get them to do it internally?
So what I'll do is I'll start by changing a joint position. So in order to engage the hamstrings on a lunge or a wall sit, the first thing I usually do is have them externally rotate their foot. And so when they externally rotate their foot, when you go and contact the ground, your foot's going to be externally rotated slightly. And so you're going to get a little bit more engagement of the bicep femoris. And so I usually have people start with different joint positions where they can own it. And then we slowly progress the foot back to neutral. Um, Sometimes I'll have people put their hands underneath there, but I don't like, I never felt like that worked good. I see that a lot, but that was just from my experience. I'd rather, I don't know, I like the methods that I do. I can say that.
Do you use I Slater told me what he just got, like a Volta, or it's like an ARP wave. I don't know if you guys use ARP wave, but something like that. Do you use that to help in your rehabilitation process or just performance process in long duration isometrics like these?
Yeah, absolutely. So the biggest thing that I love about the Volta is how quickly you can get somebody out of pain. And so, did you get my neuro course or I couldn't remember?
I did not. No.
Okay. So on my neuro course, there's a whole section that I go through on the DC devices. I made a post, I think a little short post about it on my Instagram, so you could go back and look at it. But there's a guy that came in and had knee pain, and he was doing Bulgarian split squats, and every single time he did it, he had knee pain. And so we identified his soft parietal weakness, so brain imbalance. We identified his brain imbalance. And we found that there was spots on his opposite forearm with the DC device that completely took away all of his knee pain. And then he texted the guy, the next day and was like, "Yeah, I worked out at the gym. I had zero problems, and I've been having problems for X amount of months." So the DC devices are nice in the not just in a localized search and destroy perspective of anchor it here. You're going to search around the body, try and figure out where the electrical resistance is, where the disturbances of the body, where the brain doesn't know where the muscle is interacting in space. Um, and you more of just sending the correct signal back into the brain of what you want to stimulate, and then that takes away the pain. So there's different approaches there, but most of the time a DC device is built upon you have a grounding lead that you put on the back, like usually the low back area, and then you have this sponge and you search the body, and there'll be areas that get more intense, and then when it gets more intense, then that's the problematic area. And so then they'll anchor it there, and then they'll search again, and they're finding, okay, that problematic area, what muscle is it connected to, or what area of the body is it connected to? Um, and so that's more of like kind of a traditional model, but you can build it into the functional neurology kind of principles. And just because there's pain in the knee doesn't mean that that's where you go. Most of the time, it's just the brain is imbalanced, and for some reason, pain was presenting there. And then the other nice thing about it too is you can train bilateral movements, so like a Zercher squat, and you can put it just on a left butt cheek or a right quad or something like that that's going to stimulate some sort of patterning that you're looking for. And that's very helpful as well.
How would you go about, is there any way to do this without using technology like that? Because I was getting like acupuncture treated and something, and so he was really digging into my left forearm to target my right hip just to see that. So like you just said that, and that made me think about it. But is there any way to do this? I guess that's kind of what Square One tries to do, is to rewire the nervous system by doing different strategies with just your body, not using an external source like the Volta or the ARP wave. Like, have you seen that work at all with just using the human body?
Yeah. I mean, that's most of my client. I probably less than, no, definitely less than probably 3% of my clients have a DC device technology. So we're not utilizing it. If And so I have to come up in a way for virtual clients who don't have a DC device. How are we going to get you out of pain quickly? And that's a lot of what I use in addressing the principles to adjust, alter the soft parietal weakness. And that's where I mentioned earlier, like I look from a chiropractic, I'm like, okay, how would I adjust this person? How do I want their joints to move? Okay, now how can I recreate those joint movements when I go then train them in a weight room? And that's what I'm looking at. So yeah, you can absolutely get those changes. Every time that I work with a client virtually or whatnot, I'm thinking about how am I going to adjust them? How am I going to adjust them is then how I'm going to program their movements.
Jarod, you talk a lot about the neurology and the positions and the isometrics and stuff. And something that Brett and I have discussed in the past is how elite athletes tend to be able to learn a lot faster than mediocre athletes. So, for example, if I'm working with an 80-meter thrower, he's able to make adjustments on the fly a lot quicker than if I'm working with a 40-meter thrower. And so when you're working with a low-level guy and you have them start performing isometrics to get comfortable in that position, does that start to help the athlete start to learn faster because they're holding that position and being comfortable, and then in return being able to find that position better?
Well, then that's where you got to ask the question of what's the purpose and what you're trying to teach. Like, what are you actually trying to accomplish in this session? If we're just looking at it from an isometric standpoint, yeah, they can get really good at isometrics. Um, but if you're looking at a lower level athlete, sometimes you just need to do basic movement to help them. So I don't know if that fully answers your question, but e- each scenario is going to be different. If you're looking at it from an isometric standpoint and how much their body can tolerate or hold, and the more volume that they accomplish, that doesn't necessarily equate to on the skill performance. So that has to definitely change because they can be freaks in the weight room and nothing's going to happen on the on the field.
Yeah, that was me to a T. We call it the weight room hero. The guys that are really good in the weight room but just suck on the field.
There's a different learning, different situational. Basically, you have to be more exposed to situations in your sport, and not a lot of coaches do situational training. They only do drills, and they feel like they build the drills that are going to transfer the best. However, they never look at what are the actual situations that happen in the sport and train the situations. Because then when the situations happen in the sport, they're prepared for it.
Yeah. I mean, I could agree with that. I mean, just like with football or baseball, if in football, if you're the defensive, if you're on the defense and you are looking at the offense and they're doing trick plays and they're doing offensive schemes that you've never seen before, your coach lining you up in an Oklahoma drill and saying, all right, these two guys are going to block. And then you have this one guy that you're trying to tackle. It's like, yeah, that's the drill, but that doesn't always simulate the game, because in the game, you don't know what the offense is going to do. So how you react to it based on, what your coach called out for a play and then what play the offense runs, and then how you react to it is a whole different component than just lining up and being told, all right, the running back's going to run this way. You got to tackle him when he gets to that cone.
No, 100%. And it goes even more in depth than that. There's a lot of play that even happens on social media. And it's always like, what is the purpose? What is your intent? Is it just to play, or is it to actually get them better at their sport? And a lot of people think those are the same, but they're very far in between. And everybody's talking about having fun and stuff like that. And not all situations are fun. So um, there's a lot of there's still a lot of growth for our field to happen in that perception action field for sure.
So in terms of the play, right, because I see the same thing a lot too, how would you implement gamification? Is that something that you ever implement, or do you think that it's kind of a waste of time?
So that's where the brilliant man of Brett Adams comes into play. Um, so he's just really good at asking the questions. Most people don't even ask the questions of what sport do you play? Okay. What position are you? Okay. Um, what do you you know what do you like about your position? Like where you a slot guy, you a physical guy, you break up the play guy, like what kind of guy are you? Um, how do you the ways that you're utilized, what do you like about that? What ways do you wish that your coach would utilize you more? Um, and just asking really good questions of figuring out actually what kind of player this is. Okay, and then asking the probably sometimes the most important question is uh, what like what do you want to work on? Why? What's the situation you want to work on? Why? So if we've when we were down at IHT, we ran through some of that stuff with different defensive tackles and QBs and asking the question, you know, where do you feel stuck or where do you feel like you get locked up? And that's essentially what you got to train. Um, a lot of like even the original, I mean, there's tons of research on it, but Andrew Huberman started talking about it really early on and then stopped. But he was talking a lot about fear research. And essentially the conclusion is in order to train a fear situation, you have to train the situation exactly identical to how it happens. And so that's why I said it's not always about play or fun or just playing spike ball or kicking a soccer ball or playing ultimate frisbee or like it's why are you doing it? Are you setting up cones in a certain way to formulate different arcs that mimic rounding a base? Are you, you know, it just you need to know why you're doing it. It's the best way I can say it.
Would you say, I mean, I've heard you say this before with your impulse training and how you go about it, but having the training exceed the demands of the sport. So we've seen the play a lot too, and I've done it before with my athletes, and yeah, it's just something fun to do and throw in. But it's nowhere near the same level of competition as what they're gonna see. Either like I had ice hockey girls a couple of weeks ago play handball. Like five of them like really cared. Like like three of them were the captains, so that made sense. But like they really wanted to win this stupid game of handball, and the rest were like, yeah, it's whatever. But it's nowhere near what they're gonna experience on the ice. So how do you see training almost meeting the demands of the sport or even exceeding it at times with what you do and how to prepare them?
Yeah. So this is where Brett and I work together nicely, because I don't see what happens in the skill work and the weight room as two different things. There's no separation. So when Brett's working, I'm looking exactly where an athlete is breaking down. And then that's where I know that's exactly how they need to train. And so you can see when they're put in situations like those tough situations that cause them to freeze up, the deer in the headlights, they feel lost, when they get cornered or double teamed or whatever it might be. You can see exactly how their body tries to organize itself, and you can see where it gets stuck, whether they can't stay low, maybe a hip starts getting stuck, maybe a foot's starting to externally rotate. And you're looking at different neurological things, and maybe you're starting to see postures changing as like the situation is finished. So I'm observing all that stuff that's happening, and then that's how I know I need to train. And there's several guys that I'll go and um, I was having a conversation with Peyton Barrick because when he was doing his shot put, there was part of his shoulders that were just really, really, really shrugging up. And so I had him go and grab a little dumbbell to do a military press. And we went through this range. And every single time he went through that range, the shoulder would pop up in literally the same exact position in the shot put. So and then I've done other stuff too, where it's like you put somebody on a lunge, look at where they fail, have them go sprint, take a video of them sprinting, and then compare the two. It's almost it's well, not almost. It's pretty much 99.9% of the time dead accurate. So how somebody breaks down in the weight room is how they're going to break down in their skill work and vice versa. So everything that I'm doing in the weight room is to prepare them for those situations the best that I can.
Yeah, I would say the biggest thing that comes to mind when you were talking about that is how when an athlete freezes up and has that deer in the headlights moment, it's almost because they haven't seen it enough times to know what to do in that situation. So what I think about is how Malcolm Butler in the Super Bowl. Are you guys familiar with the situation? What happened with Malcolm Butler?
He had the pick in the end zone
Yeah.
off Russell Wilson when they should have ran it with Marshawn Lynch. Yes,
Yeah.
I'm very aware.
Yeah, so with the Seahawks had the ball at the 2 yard line, had Marshawn Lynch in the background, in the backfield, and then they chose to throw, and they did like a cross route where the outside receiver came in and tried to cross up the defensive backs, and they actually showed how Malcolm Butler got burned on that same exact play in practice a couple of weeks before. And they drilled it and drilled it and drilled it because it was something that I guess the Seahawks had exposed sometime during the year or whatever, or if it was another team that did it and whatnot. But they drilled it in practice, and then when the time came, Malcolm Butler recognized it in the Super Bowl and got the pick, and they were able to win. So I mean, I just look at that and how you even see how with certain high school teams, like they will play a whole season where they only face teams that run the ball, right? And then they face a team that can have the triple option of like a quarterback that can run, a running back that can run, and a quarterback that can throw, and they get lit up because they never seen it in that fast game environment before.
Mhm. No, I mean that's spot on. That's why it's like I'm I don't understand why more people don't train stuff like that. I mean, the best players are usually the ones that watch the most film a lot of times. Um, and you could watch a film for 40 hours and every single time you watch, like what else are you picking up? Every 40 times that you watch it, there should be something new that you're picking up and seeing and analyzing. But again, that's kind of dependent on somewhat on the sport and how things are played. But yeah, I mean, yeah, what are what are athletes trying to do on the skill work and how can you I guess, accomplish that in the weight room. That's how I'm always looking at it.
It's funny how you say that though, because I just think of the stereotypical uh, sport specific work. I like you're clearly doing it a different way than having a kid with a lacrosse stick run through cones and then throw. It's just that's whenever I hear like the sport specific or making it close to the sport, I feel like people use that and say that, but they're so far off from the actual mark of what they're trying to accomplish getting better at the sport.
Well, I mean, that's think of like Jay Schroeder's thing of pipes and having the intention of what you're doing matter. Because if you're just holding an isometric and you don't give your body a direction or intention or anything, you're honestly just wasting your time. So I'm sure that's probably one of the reasons why Jay always says that when people do some sort of isometric, it's bad because it's like, why are you doing it? You're just doing it just to hold it for 10 minutes. Like, where's the life purpose in that? Where's the joy? Where's the, okay, or as you're pulling down, you're looking on lengthening your arm out, getting more length out so that when you're in a javelin position and you're cocking back here, like that's more of what you're trying to tie in is, and it's not about telling your athletes all the time. It's a lot of it about them discovering when they hold a position or they run through a situation, they articulate and communicate back to you why they're doing what they're doing without you telling them what we're doing and why we're doing it. And so if you set up a situation or if you set up something in the weight room and you ask, do you know why you're doing this? Or does this remind you of anything? Or does this feel like similar to something that you've experienced on the field? You're looking for them to be able to articulate that back. And so you're setting a purpose and an intention to actually why you're doing the movement, not just to do it to be the cause of your pain and suffering.
Do you do that before the session, middle of the session, after the session, have those deep connection communications with the athletes? Because I've worked with high school athletes and you ask them why they're doing something, they're 9 times out of 10, they'll be like, I don't know, my coach told me to. Like that PIPES acronym, like you said, it fired me up a little bit because I love it so much. But now I'm still trying to figure out, all right, how can I get an athlete to actually buy into that and to understand there's more than just the exercise? And like the exercise honestly probably doesn't even matter if you don't have the intentionality behind it. Like, are those just simple conversations you have with athletes and explaining that to them? Or is there like a certain way to structure a workout to make sure like all 5 of those acronyms get hit?
Those are not simple conversations. Those are long conversations.
Hmm.
And it typically happens when they're exposed to the point of throwing something, breaking down and crying. There's some sort of emotional transformation that happens with a follow-up of a conversation. So one, as a coach, you got to be mature enough to be able to handle or facilitate a conversation as such. Um, so yeah, they're not simple things. And you also, um, that's nothing you can force. And so you have to understand that I'm not for everybody, you're not for everybody. And we could really like for all of our high school athletes to run through all this stuff, college guys, pros guys, but if they don't care, they don't care. And there's nothing that changes that. And so that's been a good lesson that I've learned is I have a way of doing things and how I think other people should do things. And they don't agree with me. So it's just, you got to understand that. So that's why those are usually a little bit more complicated conversations. And a lot of it builds or is based upon trust. A lot of it too is getting down into the trenches of just going out and doing. And so not as much of trying to, sometimes you're not like, I mean, the actions sometimes speak louder than words. So sometimes when you're doing different movements and stuff like that, that can create different exposure um, and kind of go from there.
I actually had an athlete cry during a split squat isometric one time, and I was a little concerned because I think I was 22 and I was like no idea what was going on. It was just like this middle school girl. I was like, are you crying because it's painful, or are you crying because your older sister is right there next to you and she's doing it no problem and you feel like you have to compete against her? Like the things like that is just I think that's the biggest disconnect with this style of training, like what you talk about, and then what Jay's talking about. It's not the fancy exercises that made Adam Archuleta Adam Archuleta. Granted, like genetics and work ethic might have played a role into that as well, but I think it's those very difficult conversations and having an athlete be open and to trust you enough to explain why they feel a certain way and why they do what they do to a certain extent.
Yeah, no, that's huge. And it's normal for people because you probably done some of the isometrics and you might have felt angry.
Oh, 100%. Who was I talking to about that? Who was I talking to about that? I went into one just pissed. I was so mad.
Well, it's because you said that when you told me about it, you said that you went into one with a little bit of doubt and like immediately you failed like a minute earlier. And then I think you got pissed off going into the next one.
Yeah.
So that's going to happen, and that's the nice thing too. I mean, I guess that's an argument too for the 5 minutes is when you're time under tension of something, and you're not moving, and all you're doing is failing, 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 and failing. You're going to have an emotional response to that, and so you have to learn through that, and that's something that happens all the time on the sport as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of layers to it. I mean, in my experience, I just would get pissed about having bad sprint times or failing a squat that I should have blown up or little injuries and everything. And it's just think when you have athletes that are high achieving and that want to really be competitive and want to be the best, and then you give them something that you already know they're pretty much going to suck at, but someone not as skilled or not as talented as them is being able to dominate it. That's why I think the long duration isometrics are cool in like a group environment, because people that don't really get the spotlight in the games could potentially show out in one of those. Like I've had girls hold push-up isometrics longer than D1 football guys. And so I think that's cool. It's like in a big group setting. You're like, dude, you're letting her hold it 3 minutes longer in a push-up than you. Like, come on. And then just see how they react to that. It's cool just in a group setting. But you were at IHT and they have groups. It's not just one-on-one training. Like, how do you go about even structuring, like, all right, guys, we're going to hold this for 5 minutes. Just pick a station. Like, how does that work? Is that similar how it is, or?
So yeah, so when I was on the strength conditioning facility with Brady and when we were in the weight room, we would have anywhere between like 8 to 16 guys all at one time. And so a lot of times for me, I'm targeting what I feel like is the weakest link. So we might be doing chain hamstring shock for 30 minutes. We might be doing foot isos for 30 minutes. Like it really depended upon where I felt like they needed more exposure at. Because they're already getting a lot with the high school weight rooms and all this other stuff. Like I wasn't their sole trainer. So I looked at it more as what is the weakest length in their body right now and how do we address that? Now it's changed a little bit more now that I'm more into the neurology stuff. And I just before you like you can look at somebody's posture and you know exactly what areas of the brain are no longer functioning the way that they need to or underactive. And then you can put, okay, these guys are doing these isos, these guys are doing these isos. So I typically have pre-built out templates or a plan of what people are going to do. And depending on if we're focusing on left side brain or right side brain, these guys are going to be doing it this way. These guys are going to be doing it the opposite way. But we're all doing the same exercise. It's just maybe this guy's with the left leg, this guy's with the right leg. Maybe these guys are only doing eccentrics. These guys are only doing concentrics. Um, and it flows still really, really well. And then as a coach, though, if you're in a group setting, you're constantly walking around looking at how the athletes are doing because in those positions they're going to be compensating. And so then you have to then get them to be in the correct position. So it's very you're very involved. It's not like you're just there watching. You're actually walking around, helping facilitate, sometimes even partnering up and having each other walk through what you're looking for. And seeing that dynamic is also interesting as well, too.
Do you guys, we had this conversation before when I was doing the isometrics and I thought it helped, is what do you guys listen to in a 5 minute isometrics? Like, is it music? Is it binaural beats? Is it just a metronome ticking? Like, or is it just dead quiet and you just hear guys screaming and yelling, trying to hold position? Like, what is that? Is that even a thought? Is that a
All of the above.
all the above?
Yeah, because music is a powerful way to alter emotions. And so you can put on something that's something, or you can put on a song that everybody likes, and you can put on a genre or a song that not everybody likes. You can have annoying ticks, you can have silence. Everything's going to be a different trigger for everybody else. IHT, we talked about one guy knowing what kind of music that he didn't like, and we don't have to ask him. Like it's not about as coaches asking all of your players, what music do you like? What music do you not like? It's just you're taking notes. You have a song that's playing in the background. They walk in, they go, "Hmm, country, really? Okay, take a note." And that's all you got to do. You don't have to have a conversation about it. You just now know that they don't like country. And so, but all of the above, it depends on the person you ask. And some people say only silence. And I think what Eddie Hallman, the world strongman, I think he only trains in silence or something. One of those, him or Shaw or something like that.
I think it was Shaw. Shaw goes when Shaw's in peak training form. He goes into some dark places. Like, he goes into some dark waters. He starts posting on Instagram, and it's just very Goggins-esque. And when he gets into training, then when he's not training, he's like a jolly giant, which is pretty funny.
Yeah. So I think part of it's knowing who you are, but yeah, all of the above. Everything can manipulate something.
So with the metronome, I had this question because Brian Casaza was posted about it, and the 60 beats per minute and the ticks doing it. Explain why, and explain if different beats per minute have a different effect on what you're looking to get out of it.
Yeah. Yeah. So I use a wide range of different beats. I don't just stick to the 50 to 60. And reason being, because different paces will mess people up. So depending on you're holding an isometric, or maybe you're doing a contract relax where you contract a muscle, relax it, contract a muscle, or you're doing a fast stop where you're doing a rapid bicep contract or extension, rapid bicep curl. You're doing something to a beat. You can even see this when people do gait. So a lot of times with patients with cerebellum deficiencies, and I'm having them do like this um, modified march down a hallway or something, and I'll randomize the metronome, and there'll be certain points where they just start breaking down. They'll start walking same arm, same leg, on a faster beat or a slower beat. So I like to utilize them all. The biggest thing for a beat to me, a repetitive beat, is that our body is based upon um, syncing with everything. So if you have something that helps your mind sync, it allows your brain to kind of relax a little bit. And so it takes the pressure off the brain a little bit. The mind will just fixate to the repetitive beat, and then it can help you accomplish a task better. And then there's plenty of research on how it can help decrease pain faster, and you can learn a task faster. But I think a lot of it just comes down because there's different areas, like when your sensory system gets overloaded, it downregulates your motor system. And so, you could have somebody on a table that 15 muscles test super weak. You have them put on something that stimulates a vagus nerve, something colored glasses, or do some thoracic mobility, and then go back and retest those muscles, and they're all strong. It's just because what you did is you just balanced out that brainstem. You created that balance where there was overstimulation, where sensory system was overloaded, motor system it became underactive to compensate for all of those stressors. So I love using the metronome, especially with anybody with concussions, um, histories of TBIs. It really helps them a lot.
I mean, I just think it's pretty funny how it's getting popular now, and people always have questions about it. So I wanted to make sure you gave a good answer on it because I was doing it. I was like, I mean, I kind of makes sense, but that beep is annoying. Like, hearing it over 5 minute lunge, and you're hearing the beep, and you're trying to contract your front hamstring.
Yeah, to,
You're,
to the beat of the metronome. Yeah, and depending on the movement, like sometimes I'll go down to 20 beats, and sometimes I'll go as high as 140. Um, I think I think I told Slater this. Sometimes I like doing 128 because they found that certain times with 128 that it helps get the circulatory, like the lymphatics and the blood flowing. A lot of DJs like to, so like if you study different DJs and what, as they're picking up the beat and what they're trying to get to, sometimes I like to stick with that too. Um, so um, all of it's good.
All of it's good. It's good to know. And then with the sprinting that you were talking about, I was curious because I think one of your posts went semi-viral, kind of picked up a little bit, saying you can try to recreate the stresses of sprinting without sprinting. And I know you've said that about throwing. So, because we're in a facility now that we work out at, I'm not going to be sprinting in anytime soon. But when it gets northeast, it gets really cold. Having facilities with large sprint areas is very hard to get to. How would you recreate that type of stress of a 40-yard dash when you only have 5 to 10 yards of space?
Well, you can do repetitive acceleration work the best you can. I mean, it's very obvious that nothing can replace a skill. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I get better at throwing, you got to throw. You want to get better at sprinting or jumping, you got to do those things. So that's not what I'm saying there. And a lot of people believe that. But what we're looking at is essentially the tolerance or the endurance or like the phase changings that I talked about. And the longer or the more tolerance that your body has, then when you go and perform those other tasks of throwing or sprinting, your body is able to handle higher volumes of the sprinting and of the throwing, is what I've seen. And so, like, I've mentioned this on, I think, on other podcasts, but like pull downs for baseball. A lot of times guys do like maybe 3 to 8 pull downs and they don't exceed it. And most of the times when they get to like 6 or 7, their elbow starts hurting. And that's usually where, you run and then you throw as hard as you can. And with the chain shock stuff, we would find that guys could do 20 to 60 and have no problems, and they would never drop off. I mentioned this too, I think, I was big into A regulation, following the Corpus Victor, DB Hammer type stuff of, okay, looking for everybody to drop off, and none of my guys are dropping off. And so that's what kind of forced me to, curiosity to explore more. And the principles that I look at is the rate coding, so like how fast a contraction occurs, and how, like, what is that peak, to say, like, what is the like how much motor units being recruited and how much rate coding is occurring. So how fast the contraction and how intense is the contraction. And if you compare that to your sport and an exercise, most of the exercises that we're doing in our field don't even come close to the speed of the contraction of the sport or the amount of motor unit recruitment that is needed to perform that task. And so that's what kind of sparked that journey to figure out what exercises can we do to mimic those things. And when you look at like a slope of a graph, you've probably seen, like, when somebody throws or sprints or something, you get this like spike and then you get the relaxation. And it's like, if you compare the exercise to that movement, those slopes should be identical, or the exercise should be greater than what the slope is. And so that's what I'm looking at from that perspective of, that's how you prepare somebody to be able to handle more. And then when you test it out in an actual clinical aspect, like we did, guys are able to handle a whole lot more volume. And I know this is talked about a lot too. It's like, if you can throw 80 miles per hour or 90 miles per hour, let's say, 100 times versus throwing 90 miles per hour 3 times, like, the guy that's going to make probably the biggest jump sooner is the guy that can throw 90 100 times. Or, meters, the guy that can throw 60 meters, 100 times versus 60 meters every, you know, maybe one day a week or something like that. And so that's why the chain shock stuff came about, was that it recreates those kind of scenarios.
Yeah, and I mean, even just looking at your performance ceiling, like when you build the floor to be more consistent, you're going to have a higher ceiling and you're also going to be more consistent. So you know that if you go out on the mound, you're going to have chances are you're going to have a pretty good outing, versus going out on the mound or the runway and being like, all right, well, we'll see how it holds up today. We'll see how the elbow feels. We'll see how far I can put one out there. It's like you end up being more confident in yourself. And I mean, I think too that more kids need to hear as well that the having a strong base and having a good floor in terms of your performance is so important because of how long it actually takes people to athletically develop. And I just see over and over and over again so many guys hitting their peak at late 20s, early 30s, and that's what I think more kids need to see and not just focus on trying to be throwing 100 miles an hour at 18.
Yeah. And it's okay. I mean, yeah, everybody's trying to rush everything, but money influences that as well. But yeah, you can be very patient. I mean, a lot of people talk about Danaher, the jiu-jitsu coach. He talks a lot about, it takes like 5 dedicated years to get really like good at something. And so it just takes time. It's nothing to rush. And the other thing with that too that I was going to mention with the shock stuff is the volume does matter. I think I mentioned early on, like you might be doing hamstring curls for 30 minutes. And the more volume that you can handle, the bigger bull that you have. We always talk about like trying to get 300 reps within 5 minutes. Um, you're moving pretty good then, and you can handle a lot of reps. And we did find that that transfers over really well.
That's what Dak was talking about on our episode, was that he was saying how he stopped listening to a lot of podcasts and reading a lot of articles because he just said that the data that he wanted, no one had done it yet. So he was like, there was no data on how much 2,500 impulses on the rear right side will do for you when you're, rehabbing from throwing or whatever. And he's like, so I went out and it took me 5 hours and I did it. And then I did the other side. And I was just like, dude, it's crazy how that's like literally the epitome of being your own test subject, because you want to do something that literally no one else has done or studied before.
Yeah. And people get really fixated on that too. I mean, I get it all the time in the comments. Where's the research? Where's the research? Where's the research?
I am the research.
There's enough people out there now that have had such positive experiences. And um, so it's only going to grow. And as it grows too, like there is still correct and wrong ways to do it, in my opinion. Positioning still matters in those impulses just as they do in the isometrics. Um, and so safely prepping somebody for those positions does matter a lot.
Tony Holler was talking about it. Something that I love about the like where's the research crowd is that when you coach about it, like when you're coaching and you're living it and you're seeing results, you kind of just start to develop this reasonable hunch, which he was talking about, because they're saying Jay Schroeder might have not known exactly what he was doing, like from a neurology side with Adam Archuleta, but now Dan Fichter's talking about connecting the dots, seeing the new research that's coming out, and how advanced he was back in the early 2000s without maybe not understanding fully why, but he just had that reasonable hunch being like, all right, this guy's a freak athlete. Clearly what we're doing is working to some extent, and other people are getting results as well. So I think that is what something people need to understand is, in order to advance forward, like, research is going to take years in order to catch up. Like there's research that you can go off of and have reasonable hunches on, but if you're trying to push something that's never been done before, like you kind of just got to rely on your coaching skill and your past knowledge and past experiences and what you're doing on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah. Yeah, it's I mean, so I almost w went down the route of getting my master's and doctorate in biomechanics. And then I did independent research studies while I was in college as well. And I'm glad to be out of that field now because it as I mean, and this is just for me in my experience, because as a somebody who's very curious and exploring and challenging, you feel very capped and limited in the research field. And you always feel 20 years behind. And even when you try and do something that's going to progress the field, it's still behind, and everybody's going to critique it and tell you how wrong it is. And it's just like a never ending game. And so that's the nice thing about chiropractic too. Like there's never good evidence on chiropractic either, never really good research, because how you adjust somebody can be different every single time, and how you adjust one person might not be how you need to adjust the next guy that walks in the room. So it's like you can't standardize training or chiropractic adjustments. So it's like every person needs something different. And that's why I like the functional neurology aspect is, you can quickly in under 60 seconds look at somebody's posture, know exactly what regions of the brain might not be functioning, and you know exactly how they need to train. And we get 59 seconds of assessing and then we get the rest of the 59 minutes of uh, actually training, and that's what I like. So yeah, everybody's different.
One of the first instances I heard of that, I heard Joe DeFranco speak at this conference, and being ahead of research, he's doing sleds and then going into 10-yard dashes. It's like he's doing a sled sprint and then going to sprint 10-yard dash. And he's like, there was no research telling me that was good. It's like, but my guys were getting faster. So I just did it. It's like this, it's just being a coach and like seeing what's in front of you. I think that's just always having that inquisitive mind and the curiosity led approach of seeing what makes sense to you and then going down that rabbit hole a little more. And then something that I'm curious about is because I was talking to Slater and then your post about your ruptured Achilles. And Slater told me you aren't looking to get surgery.
No, no.
So that is mind blowing to me. And I want to hear your side of things. And why do you feel like you're not going to get the surgery and you're going to almost self rehab? Correct? Yeah. Explain that, because ruptured Achilles to a lot of people, it's been a very common injury, especially the last NBA season with Tatum and Halliburton and others going down with it. And I want to hear your take on it. How did it happen?
Dude, I'm getting like queasy over here.
Queasy? Oh, with the ruptured Achilles? You had Tommy John.
Dude, no, but I don't know what it is about the Achilles, man. It's just like, ugh.
I'm with you. There was plenty of times where I saw way too many Achilles ruptures happen before mine. And, it's like you turn your phone off and you chuck it across the room because you're like, I never want to see that.
Yeah.
And so I'm with you. I mean, I was joking with my mom. My mom was like, well, how serious is it? And I was like, well, if I was a horse or a cow, they would shoot me dead.
Oh,
Jeez. It's true. You got to take him out back.
It's an injury where they say a year long rehab process plus more, and a lot of people don't come back from it very strong. Either they're always in pain or, something's bothering. But anyway, most Achilles injuries don't happen like it seems like it shouldn't happen. Like it's like somebody just trying to gently accelerate. There was another coach that I mentored. He reached out to me and was like, "Yeah, I had one of my high school girl athletes. She was just approaching to kick a soccer ball, and she ruptured her Achilles. And a lot of the Achilles ruptures don't make sense to the point where I think a lot of it is more emotional or trapped emotions just in that area because the mechanism doesn't make sense. And I know they talk about, okay, well, the heel's trying to go backwards as the body's going forward and then it rips. But it's like the load that they're doing that on is so low. Like it's not like they're in their fifth or sixth step of a sprint or, it's not where there's like high force. It's just like guys dribbling, they see an open lane, they go to step forward, rupture. For me, I was on some tennis courts and I was just shuffling back and forth. I went to shuffle and in my mind, I was like, okay, I want to figure out how far can I get from each side of the tennis court? How many steps can I get there? And I was just trying to work at like a 50, 60% intensity, counting my steps. I was like, okay, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And then on that third, I was like, okay, now I'm going to go. And I tried to go and it was like my foot got blown off. Sorry, he's
I'm good. I'm good.
Daniel's over there.
You talking about it?
Biting down on his sweatshirt. So yeah, it was a very odd experience. I guess I'll skip all the graphic details, but yeah, I mean, for me and where I'm at in my life, doctors or anything like that is not even a first thought. And as soon as it happened, it was just like, I thought about my daughter and my wife and thinking about, okay, how, like, damn, like, how are things going to change now? Like, I have a daughter that's almost 2. She runs around everywhere. I'm stuck, crawling and on crutches. So, I thought about that aspect. And then, but then going from a rehab standpoint, it's like there's no other, that's just what I do. Like it just, if it's a ligament it's torn, then you repair it. The only time that I think I would actually seek medical help was actually like a serious bone break or traumatic car accident or something like that. But if it's just like a ligament tear, I know I can easily rehab that. Um, and so, yeah, I'm not doing surgery. I got a lot of questions about getting an MRI because, again, the research world, well, if the Achilles tendon is further than 10 centimeters apart, then it's not going to grow back together. And for me, it's not a thought. Like it's just the Achilles ruptured. I know that it ruptured. I don't need imaging to prove that it's already ruptured. And and I'm just going to go ahead and rehab it and train it. And it's doing great. Um, my tendon is actually coming a lot stronger. I'm seeing it realign really well. I didn't have any severe bruising. Um, and probably the most like tense stuff that I've dealt with is swelling and loss of sensation. So I don't know if you know anything about the DC devices, but the one of the schools of thought is that you crank it up to like 100, or you're trying to get to this highest setting because then that means there's less electrical resistance. And I had to turn my device up to 57 out of 100 before I could feel any sort of sensation. So I lost pretty much all sensation in my foot. And put that in perspective, a lot of like my Gen Pop patients, they sit anywhere between 8 to 25 out of 100. And 25 is like, a 10 out of 10 discomfort for them. A lot of times different athletes will go up to like a 50 or a 60 might be their max, and then they can't tolerate it anymore. And so for me to not feel a single thing until I got to about 57 and felt the most mildest tingle ever, was pretty crazy. I don't like the sensation of not feeling my limbs. Um, but yeah, so if I just where I'm at in my life, and maybe if I was a college athlete, and it would be a different story, I would get it reattached. But what I know now, I still feel confident that I can rehab it back to 100%, and be even stronger than before it even happened, which I know that for sure.
How long ago did this happen?
4 days ago, right?
No, this happened. Um, let's see, it's October 30th. So this happened about almost 2 weeks ago because it
Okay.
happened 2 weeks ago on Saturday, 9:30 Eastern, right around 9:30, 9:45 Eastern time. And I've had my DC device pretty much on the whole time. I've used different cold lasers. I've used another device called stochastic resonance therapy. And so that's another thing too, is like I have access to very powerful rehabilitation devices. So again, like if I get injured, which honestly, this is the most severe injury I've ever had, and I've not had an injury in over 6 years, but I talked about in my post how different life changes, getting married, having a kid, like training and all that stuff no longer became a focus. And now it's about, okay, how do you provide for your family? And, how do you raise a child? And so like my focus shifted a lot. So for me, I see like almost when it happened, I saw a snapshot of everything that happened in my life, from seeing other people's Achilles tears to seeing different things in my own diet to seeing things in my own exercise habits where I was like, yeah, this makes sense why this happened.
Mm.
And and now I look, it's, you're definitely frustrated. It's upsetting. You can be mad about it. People can feel sorry for me. And for me now, it happened. Okay, I accept it. I processed it, went through the whole emotions of crying and just the different fears that I have. And then now it's time to rehab. And so that's never changed for me, if that makes sense.
I think what you said about seeing the warning signs like after the fact resonates with me a ton. I'm actually getting an elbow surgery in 2 weeks to get some bone spurs removed because I had Tommy John just like yourself 6 years ago. And that was pretty much the last injury I've had. And so I had Tommy John 6 years ago. And what happened was the last 3 years now, I've been focused on my career, being married, and coaching. And I still will train at a high level, but a lot of times what I did was I neglected a lot of the prep work that was leading to my success when I was younger, right? So you would have a full off season of prep work and ramping up, and then hitting your max intensity in the weight room or in the throwing volume or in your throwing intensity. And the last 3 years, I would be like, oh, I did the prep work, I did the mobility, I did the hypertrophy, I did the strength. Now I will, do like a couple weeks of prep and then go right up to pretty much 100% almost immediately. And it was just this April, I went out and threw first time in probably 7 or 8 months, and I was literally like right around my PR in practice. And I was like, dude, I feel amazing. I feel like I'm in my prime. I'm better than I was in college, whatever. And then it was like, literally, I went out and I power cleaned the next week, and I felt like a pop in my elbow. And then it was like a month or two went by, and it wasn't getting any better. I was really, really locked up. I got an X-ray, and sure enough, there was just like 3 bone spurs that had been growing, and they said that it was exactly because of the spike in throwing volume and then the decrease in throwing volume, and then the spike in throwing volume and the decrease in throwing volume, and because there was already that pre-existing injury that was there in the past. And it was just like after it happened, I had that realization of like, duh, like why would I expect anything else than when I'm just ignoring all the very principles that I coach my athletes to take seriously.
Yeah, and everybody has their own perspective. Um, and I know a lot of people think I'm crazy. Um, and that's okay. But yeah, obviously you want to build yourself where that doesn't happen. And it's what you did of getting married and, having other focus, and me, same thing. It's not like it's wrong or bad or anything. It's just, there's different focuses in life. And a lot of, what I guess I could say this. I mean, a lot of what I thought was trying to back off my intensity even too, is like sometimes giving less gives more. So like, as in, if I'm going to give my 50% in this, whatever I'm doing, then actually I'm going to perform, like I'm going to run faster, throw harder. Like, just the idea of sometimes if you try to force the throw or force the sprint, like it's actually your slower times, and then your fastest times are actually the ones where you're like, man, I was slow. And then you're like, really? I was that fast? Like it didn't feel that way. And so um, we talked about Duncan Atwood, but a lot of what he talks about is like beat the mark. And so just like, you're not trying to hit a PR every single time, because if you hit a PR in practice, then that's all you're going to chase your entire life. But rather just, okay, I'm going to throw this one 50 meters. The next one I'm going to throw it 50 and a half. Okay, now I'm going to throw it 52, 53. Maybe I go to 60. Now I'm going to throw it back to 50. And so you're just learning more of the idea of, it's kind of like the brain body awareness of like, it doesn't matter where it is on the field. I know that I can hit exactly 45 meters. I know I can hit exactly 65 meters, 62 meters. You put a cone out anywhere on the field, I'm going to hit it.
Yeah. I think that what you were saying too about forcing the throw or whatnot resonates with me as well, because I remember I was the type of athlete when I was in college. I wanted to be the best. I tried the hardest, right? And I got in my own way a lot of times. And then that's where I think after college, I started to relax a little bit, because my focus was my wife, my business, my athletes, where the focus wasn't my throwing anymore. And that's when I finally learned how to relax in my throw. And that's when, like I said, I was able to start hitting right around my PR in practice, which before I would be at probably 10 to 15 meters less than my PR in practice, because I would never be able to replicate that intensity until I would go balls to the wall. And then I got to the point where I was able to replicate it over and over and over again, because I was just relaxed. And yeah,
that's great. That's amazing, because that's the one thing that Brett and I always talk about too, is like, can your 60% be your opponent's 100%?
mm-hmm.
And so like, they're trying to go balls to the walls like crazy, for the first half, first 3 quarters or whatever. It's a close game, and it's like, dude, I've been only competing at 60, 70%. Like, you've been going all out. Like, I got another 15 minutes, and now you're gassed, and like, I'm good. Like, you don't
Yeah.
want to see my 100%. Like,
Yeah, you got to conserve that energy too, because I think that a lot of times as well, it was really easy to go out and rip those warm-up throws, and you're the practice hero. You're warming up, trying to scare everyone off, and then when the meat comes around, your best throw is your first one, and then you just downhill from there.
Iman Shumpert had a sick Kobe Bryant story where it's at the Garden, and Iman Shumpert's balling out. He's guarding Kobe, nicks her up, and he's feeling himself. He's feeling really good. And right when the fourth quarter starts, Kobe comes up, taps him on the butt, and goes, "You had a good game." And then that's still full. And then Iman's like, "We got the full fourth quarter left." And then Kobe comes out and drops 20 in the quarter just because he's been coasting the entire time. He's like, "All right, it's fourth quarter. I've been keeping it close. It's time to put it away." The Lakers are ended up to win. I think the best athletes really know how to do that really well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. There is, it was kind of cool to see too with the Bear brothers too when we were in Seattle area, and they started talking about, like, it kind of clicked for Peyton, because I mean he ran a 10.25 100 meters, which is great, and awesome for a decathlete. And we were breaking down different phases of the sprint. And he was like, you know what? He was like, I'm going to do way better if I try and do a 7 out of 10 intensity on my acceleration and then go 10 out of 10 the rest of the way. And then on my long jump, maybe I need to hit 6 out of 10 intensity here. Like, he started breaking down the different events and the different intensities he needed to do, and then at different phases within that, which he knew he could handle. So then he'd be like, okay, I know that I can handle on my long jump a 6 out of 10 intensity up to the approach. Okay, now next I'm going to see if I can do a 7 out of 10. Okay, now I try 8 out of 10. Oh, that messed up my timing and rhythm. Now I'm going to go back down to, a 7.5 out of 10 intensity, and everything kind of clicked there. So, sometimes it's like you have to move backwards to move forwards. You have to move left to move right. Like, you have to, in order to throw harder, you have to throw, not as hard, like, or, if you're going to sprint faster or whatever, you need to move a little bit slower. And that's where it just kind of comes down to timing and rhythm, which again is a whole lot of, I mean, that's the whole sport. And so that stuff really matters.
Yeah, baseball is huge with that, with the swing. Like, if you try to swing at 100%, you're either going to swing and miss, roll over, or pop up. It's like no baseball player ever truly swings at 100% intensity, because that's when just the muscles come into play and you just lose that rhythmic relaxation feel.
Yeah. You see it all the time. Everybody tries to hit a home run and they swing as hard as they can, and then they swing and miss. And they're like, "Oh man, you really wild up on that one." It's very rarely that you actually see them connect when they're trying to go balls to the walls.
Yeah, anything else?
No, I mean, I just think that your episode was probably one of the best examples of what we're trying to accomplish on this podcast, of just talking about how the training affects the on-field performance and trying to bridge that gap. So, I mean, I appreciate you coming on and sharing all your insight, and it's really cool even to see how you are yourself bridging the gap between strength coaching and chiropractic work, right? Because you said that there's not too many people that are maybe doing exactly how you're doing it, and I just think it's really cool how you're taking that spin on it and doing a really good job.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.
Well, Dr. Burton, I hope you recover well, and definitely be seeing all your stuff on Instagram, and I'll be sure to stay in touch because I got some injuries I want to talk to you about.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks for tuning in.
And if you enjoyed it, please leave a 5-star rating and review and share the show, because the only way that this show grows is if you like it, share it, and tell your friends and family about it.
New episode every Monday.